Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and we are up to the Montreal Canadiens here on the previews going into the 2024-25 season. And I've got Ryan Szporer here, covers the Canadiens here at the Hockey Writers. How's it going, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing great. Hockey is almost here. We've gone through the dog days of the summer. We're into September now, and training camp pretty close to getting started for all the teams, and Canadians included. I, of course, didn't make the playoffs last season. Got another high draft pick, and then drafted Ivan Demidov, who is a very exciting prospect to be added to this system. I included to a bunch of other guys that the Canadiens already have got either in the lineup or coming. So very exciting future. They're not there yet. The rebuild is still in progress, but every season they still get better and creating that new core of players to build around. So let's get going into the forward group going into this season, which saw a big addition in Patrik Laine. They traded for him a few weeks ago, and he's going to add a lot to this team veteran wise. He's a goal scorer. We all know that. He's gone through a few teams since he was a really big goal scorer in Winnipeg, but hopefully he can get going here. So, what do you think about? We'll start with Laine. What do you think about him being added to this group?
Yeah, so I had earlier in the summer when it was kind of just a pipe dream that the Canadians would trade for Patrik Laine, I kind of wrote a piece suggesting that it only made sense if the price tag was reasonable, and it was really beyond reasonable in the sense that the Canadians only gave up Jordan Harris, a young defenseman, to the Columbus Blue Jackets and even got a second round pick coming the other way. So obviously it's contingent on the Canadians absorbing the entirety of Patrik Laine's $8.7 million cap hit. But I think it's, the stereotypical low risk, high reward type of situation in that Laine is coming into a situation where, well, he isn't really coming into it. He's coming to a new market, but the situation is such that he just got cleared out of the NHL NHLPA Player Assistance Program. This is going to be the second time he requested a trade out of town. He's got 2 years left under contract. Obviously, the luster around him has worn off to a degree, and he needs to rebuild his value, as evidenced by how little the Canadians gave up to get him. So I think it's fairly clear that he understands the situation and that he has to put his best foot forward over the next 2 years, following which his contract will expire. He needs to rediscover his scoring touch in order to be able to score again. And that's why I don't see him being what some might consider a distraction in the locker room. I don't see that as being it's not going to happen realistically, I guess is a good way to put it. So ultimately the Canadians get a potential, emphasis on potential, 40 goal scorer, seeing as he scored 44 in his season with Winnipeg Jets, 36 his rookie season. He was also effectively a point per game player 2 seasons ago with the Blue Jackets and the season before that. So the Canadiens are getting a great player to insert into most likely their second line. I don't see the downside really.
Mm. Yeah, I don't either. I mean, looking at a guy that he seems to wanted to come to Montreal, he's excited to join the lineup and join a market that's pretty intense for high-end players, and seems to be okay with it. So I think he's going to be really good. I mean, obviously going to probably play in the top six, and on the power play, he's going to get a lot of opportunities to score and with some really good players. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do in Montreal too. All right, what about the rest of the forwards? I mean, you're looking at guys coming back from injury like Kirby Dach, probably going to play, hopefully, not probably, hopefully play a full season. Fingers crossed that he does. I mean, there's your second line center, and of course, still led by Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Yuri Slafkovsky on that top line, which was really good last season. when everyone was healthy. That is. What do you think about the rest of these forwards here?
Yeah, so the first line, in my opinion, like you said, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, it's effectively set in stone. That's why I say the line, despite being a former 44 goal scorer, is probably going on the second line with Doc, as you mentioned. I think the likeliest winger for them is probably going to be Alex Newhook. It just, my personal opinion is it should be Joshua Roy.
Hmm.
I don't think I think the only way that happens is if the Canadiens trade Christian Dvorak, enabling Newhook, who filled in at center for Doc last season after Doc suffered a season-ending injury 2 games in. That's a mouthful. But Newhook down the stretch kind of proved himself as a viable option down the middle. But with Dvorak, he's a pending unrestricted free agent, but he's going to be making 4.45 million, and he's kind of, all due respect to him, he is an NHLer and a talented one at that, but he's kind of obsolete in terms of what he brings to the table, what general manager Kent Hughes, has been establishing during the rebuild. So ideally, the Canadiens trade Dvorak, enabling Newhook to center the third line, which would put Dubois in a top 6 position and putting him in the best position to succeed. Because really, Roy showed after the All-Star break that he was one of the best Canadiens forwards at possession wise. His production maybe leaves something to be desired, but I think the general consensus among analysts is he projects as a top 6 forward, and I think the Canadiens and they're better served just kind of putting him in that position, and especially with Doc, who's proven to make his line mates wherever he plays better. Laine, who's again, potential superstar talent. It just makes sense in my, especially seeing as Newhook had found success with Gallagher and Yoel Armia stretch. So that could be, in theory, the third line. That's my take.
Which would be a pretty good third line, how you're looking at it. I mean, Gallagher's obviously not the same player he was before, but he's still a very effective guy to be playing in your bottom 6. I mean, I'd want Gallagher in my bottom 6. He's very good, even though he's not the same goal scorer he was in his prime. So, I mean, it is still, I think, a really good forward group when you're looking at it. And if everyone stays healthy, I think they're pretty decent, right? So we'll
Yeah.
see. Hopefully that happens. All right. Moving to the defense. You're looking at this group, it didn't see any changes really throughout the offseason. Re-signed a few guys. Lane Hutson comes in for potentially a full season. I'll get your take on that. Right now it's projected to be. A lot of people want him to be. What do you think about the group? First of all, is Lane Hutson a guy that's going to start the season in this defense core?
I mean, he might start. You might get a few games in for an audition purpose. The purpose of an audition. But the way I see it, and I don't have a crystal ball, so this is just my opinion. I don't think the Canadiens are best served keeping him on, just for the simple reason that they have so many names on his left side, technically above him on the depth chart. And I think it's worthwhile to let him play the season in the American Hockey League with the Laval Rocket so that he can properly adjust to the professional game. He did get in 2 games at the end of last season after signing his entry-level contract. But that was mainly because he wasn't eligible for the AHL at that point once he signed. So, it's all dependent on how his training camp goes. Obviously, if he blows everyone away and he earns it on his own merits, then I don't think the Canadiens have much of a choice. But you're looking at on the left side only, got Mike Matheson, who scored a career high 62 points and 11 goals last season. And you got Kitten Gooley, who just signed for a $5.55 million cap hit until 2031. And then you've got Arbor Jack guy, who just signed a one-way extension. And then you've got below him, technically, Jaden Struble, who kind of enabled the Canadiens to take their time with Jack Eye last year, sending him down, or sorry, for some context, Jack Eye got injured and the Canadiens kept him down in the AHL while Struble was effectively taking his spot because he proved himself as being, for all intents and purposes, NHL ready and maybe more consistent than Jack Eye at that point. So in my mind, all four of those guys, following the departure of Harris to the Blue Jackets, who would have been another one, they're NHL ready and have proven themselves to a degree, whereas Hudson still has a lot to prove in my mind. I'm actually writing a piece to this effect that will come out on in a few days. But yeah, if my opinion means anything, I say that the Canadiens take their time with Hudson and let him develop for a single season in the NHL.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, he had played 2 games last season and looked really good, but this was against Red Wings. I mean, of course, Red Wings team was really good and they were almost to the playoffs, but it's 2 games, a 2-game sample size. And yeah, he looked good. He looked NHL ready. He looked like he should be in the lineup, but I do agree. I think he probably would serve better playing a lot of minutes in the AHL, probably, and first power play unit, all that stuff. And be developed that way, and then come in full time next season and look good. So I don't know. I agree with you. I think he'd probably be better served being in the AHL, even though I do want to see him in the NHL because I really like him as a prospect. So, but he's going to be a heck of a defenseman in his prime, and I'm excited. So I don't want them to be messed up. So I think he would be good playing in the AHL for sure. All right, goaltending. It's the same tandem, although I mean Jake Allen has moved on. Traded last season, so you got Samuel Montembeault as the pretty clear-cut starter now. Caden Primeau backing him up. What do you think about this tandem? Of course, it's going to be the tandem for a bit here until Jacob Fowler comes into the picture, but this is the tandem right now.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, I'd say so. It's an average goaltending tandem. The days of Carey Price are long over, where all due respect to Montembeault, who's proven capable of stealing the odd game. I'd say that for the most part, this isn't a team. The Canadiens teams of the past, they kind of relied on goaltending to a huge degree. This isn't the way that Kent Hughes is building his team. When he first came on, he expressed how he wanted an offensive-minded club, and I think he's building that, especially with the acquisition of Laine. So I don't think that the Canadiens are necessarily looking to acquire an elite goalie. I think they're satisfied with the play of the Montembeault and Primeau, especially until Fowler comes on as a projected #1. But Montembeault, I mean, his stat line isn't exactly eye-catching by any stretch. I'm just going to read it here: 16, 15, and 9 with 3.14 goals against average and 903 save percentage. That, if memory serves, 903, that was actually the league average. So he's right on the money. And I think that the goals against average will improve based solely on the fact that the defense in front of him is going to be, it's a young defensive core, and it's going to they'll have an additional year of experience under its collective belt. So I think in that respect, he's going to be getting the job done, just not, he's not going to be doing a superstar-esque type of Primeau. So I think there's the potential that Primeau usurps Montembeault, but I mean, I wouldn't really count on it. Just, it's worth noting that, he went 8, 9, and 4 with a 2.99 goals against average and 0.910 save percentage. But after they traded Jake Allen, after having, done, utilized the 3 goalie system the entire, and he was getting more starts, Primeau actually had 921 save percentage from the trade deadline on. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily top competition because he was still the backup. But I think, Primeau established himself as an NHL caliber goalie, whether he remains a backup or he, takes his game to another level. It's definitely welcome because there was a time when not too long ago there were doubts that he would ever make it. So I think the Canadiens are happy with how things have turned out.
Yeah, I think like Primo's been in the system quite a while now, and you're looking at him as now he's finally going to be able to be in the NHL as the second goalie rather than being part of a three-person system there. So it should serve him a bit better. And of course, Montembeault's proven to be a pretty good goalie in the NHL. I mean, probably not a starter on a contender, but he's good. He's still a decent goalie. So I mean, for now, I think the tandem is good, like you said. But Fowler's going to be, of course, the guy you'd assume the way he's been trending. So it's going to be interesting when he comes in the picture how it all looks. But all these, I mean, Montembeault's not on a huge contract, so probably by the time that happens, he'll be ready to come in and be the starter potentially. So we'll wait and see for that. Right, looking at the division, the Atlantic is a very interesting one. There's so many different teams that are at different stages of their either rebuilding or they're in the contender status. Where do the Canadiens fall in here? Of course, they've been at the bottom for a while. Do you see them making any sort of movement in this division this year?
I think especially following the acquisition. Okay, let me put it this way. In my opinion, the Canadiens played last season without their second line center in Doc. I think assuming he's healthy, that right there kind of solidifies that second line. And Canadiens jumped from, I'm kind of jumping around here again, but the Canadiens went from a last place finish in 2022 with 55 points. Then they gained 13 points in the standings for 68. Last year they had 76. So they're trending up. And that was even without Doc in the lineup. So with Doc in the lineup, a guy who many had seen as having the capacity to one day take over the mantle of number one center and, exceed the capabilities of Nick Suzuki, who just came off a 77-point season last year, establishing himself as the number one center, in my opinion. I think, in my mind, I had the Canadiens competing for playoff spots this coming season, even before they acquired Laine. Now, with Laine in the mix, I think that you have to, I think that should definitely put them in the mix at the end of the season. I can't say for sure that they're going to make the playoffs because, again, they have at least three teams to leapfrog, and the Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Detroit Red Wings to make the playoffs. So yeah, and they're all, like you said, in similar boats. In my opinion, and again, I'm sure this is going to elicit some kind of strong reaction from the fans, but I'd say that the Canadiens had the best offseason of the four teams and improved so significantly that, I mean, the Senators only were above them in the standings by 2 points, if memory serves. I don't see how, objectively speaking, anyone can deny that the Canadiens are a threat to leapfrog over them at least. I don't think, personally, I'm not a big fan of what the Red Wings did this offseason. I mean, signing Tarasenko, sure, but I think he's past his best before date. But they also let Daniel Sprong go, and they traded Fabry. They also traded Jake Wallman, I believe, who was a defenseman. Their goaltending, I think, is maybe even below that of the Canadiens. in my opinion, the Sabres of those three teams are probably the biggest threat to actually make the playoffs. And I think the Canadiens are going to be right there. And maybe I don't think a 90-point finish is out of the question for the Canadiens, is what I'm saying. Bottom line.
I can see that. I mean, the thing is they did improve quite a bit to get, getting Laine makes a big difference in their offense, especially if he can rediscover what he was just maybe a couple seasons ago. And he's going to be, like I say, playing with some really good players. And that's a big boost, adding a 30 to 40 goal scorer into your lineup. And yeah, that too. I mean, that's pretty much an acquisition in itself. And you can play a full season. So yeah, they are a better team, and I think they probably be in the wild card fight, right? So
I mean, that's what I see personally. I think they're gonna fall short, but I mean, I don't. Obviously, health is a factor because it has been for such a long time for the Canadiens, and they need to stay healthy. But if they do, I don't see how they reasonably, tread water in the standings. They, logically speaking, they're going to be a much better team.
yeah, I see that too for sure. All right, let's move into our quick fire round, and these are just one or two sentence answers. And quickly go and talk a bit about this. So I'll start with the biggest storyline or question mark going into this season for the Canadiens.
The top storyline, in my opinion, is Kirby Dach's health and the health of the Canadiens in general, as we just talked about it. Just the reason that Kirby Dach has potential to be a difference maker, a game breaker, as a third overall draft pick way back when. I believe he's only going to be 24. And he just effectively, the Canadiens are gaining second line center, someone who proved himself to be a first line player when he, in his first season with the Canadiens, when he kind of complimented Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield on the top line. So, in my opinion, just his addition alone is something to kind of. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if he returns to form because the injury he sustained to his ACL and MCL, if I remember correctly. There are obviously risks involved with that to the long-term outlook of a player's skill level, but I think that you can relatively safely assume that he's going to come back near 100%, and if that's the case, it's going to be interesting to see just how that second line revolves around him.
He's a really young player still too. So I mean, you're looking at and he hasn't played a ton in the last few seasons because of those injuries. So a full season out of him is a big deal. So yeah, for sure, that's a big storyline. All right, one or two breakout stars this season.
Okay, let's say Foy, and let's say Dach again, just because Dach had 38 points in 58 games in 2022, 2023, when again he kind of complimented Suzuki and Caulfield on that first line. So I'm kind of operating under the simple premise that 38 points doesn't necessarily constitute breaking out, even though prorated those kind of amount to over 50 82-game season. So I think that if Dach stays healthy, he will well, break out and kind of establish himself as that top six forward and that number two center that the Canadiens have needed for so long. Yeah.
There you go. All right, someone that needs to bounce back from last season.
I'd say Josh Anderson needs to bounce back because his contract at 5.5 million per kind of necessitates it.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of played his way out of the top six to start last season, and he was usually good for 20 goals as a Canadian. I don't think he ever scored more than 32 points, but he was always consistent for around 20 goals. And then, now he's 30 and his production dropped to 9 goals last season. And he kind of just seemed to bring down whatever line he was on. And I know it's,
Mhm.
in my opinion, it's unlikely that he kind of finds a way to. There's just so many people above him who it's a deep team all of a sudden up front, and I don't see a place for him anywhere else other than on. I would put him on the fourth line, but he's probably going to make it the second line. Sorry, third line. I had him on the second line prior to the acquisition of Laine, but with Laine, you have to put him on the second line,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, he definitely needs to be established himself as a middle six forward at least. Otherwise, it's gonna get ugly in Montreal.
Yeah, he's getting paid a lot for a be the bottom six guy, but that's just how it goes right now with the lineup. But if he could bounce back and maybe even get some value in a trade, more value if if he's playing well too. All right, a player or it could be a situation too. So who or what could be an X factor this season?
Um, does Laine count?
Lonnie could be, yeah, he's be an X factor, yeah.
Um, yeah, let's go with Laine. I mean, Doc applies too, but
Yeah.
Doc, I'd say Laine just because no one really knows what the Canadians are getting, and again, a low risk, high reward type of situation. And that the Canadiens didn't give up much to get him, so whatever they get out of him is gravy. But you're talking about someone who once scored 44, and he's presumably rejuvenated
Hmm.
a bad situation with the Blue Jackets. So I have to believe that, especially playing with Doc, which is the presumption that he's going to be able to rediscover his scoring touch. And if that happens, and he's good for, let's say, conservatively 30 goals, I think that's 30 more goals that they didn't have last for a team that was struggling to score. That's going to make a big difference.
For sure. I think those, and especially Doc, of course, be an X factor too. All right, let's talk some prospects. So, I mean, there's not like the lineup is pretty full, but do you see any rookies or prospects that could crack the lineup that no one's expecting at this point?
That no one. I don't see any off the radar prospects making the team.
Hmm.
Uh, if that's what you're asking,
Yeah.
like there are outside. Owen Beck might be the closest one to off the
Hmm.
radar. Even him, I'd say that people are kind of hoping beyond hope that he makes the team, but yeah, projected to be a bottom six center. I just don't see how the Canadiens fit him in, especially if Dvorak doesn't get traded. Because you're looking at Suzuki, Doc, Dvorak, potentially Newhook, and Evans, um, uh, you know, down the middle of the ice for the Canadiens. I guess he could slot in as a winger, but I don't see that happening because Canadiens are just so deep up front that in my opinion, it makes sense to let him develop in the.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think probably better off at just developing right now instead of being forced into a bottom six role at this point. All right, outside of making the team, what prospects, and there's quite a few Canadians have in their system, but who should everyone be watching this season? There's probably an obvious one they just drafted, but
Yeah, I'd say Demidov. uh, I, I mean, if you can catch the KHL games, I
yeah.
would. He was just, I don't know if he's projected to play a huge role on his KHL team. Politics being a factor, unfortunately, seeing as he's established that he wants to come over to North America. So, I mean, it is what it is, but he's got 1 year left under contract there, I believe. Um, but based on projections, he's, yeah, no one knows for sure, obviously, but he was considered to be the second best player available in the draft, falling to number 5 because of in my opinion, the political climate and contract situation. He has potential based on scouting reports to actually be the most offensively dynamic player taken above Macklin Celebrini. And we're talking about, again, this is just what I've read, ceiling of, 130 points. I don't know if he ever attains that. I don't think anyone does, but that's the skill level we're talking about. A legitimate superstar talent. And that would effectively give the Canadiens their first game-breaking talent in decades. We're talking like, some may compare him to Alexei Kovalev, but Kovalev only mustered a single point per game season with the Canadiens.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Demidov legitimately has potential to be the best Canadiens draft pick since Carey Price in 2005, and the best Canadiens draft pick up front since Guy Lafleur. Part of that is an indictment of the Canadiens drafting record for so long, but it's also a testament to Demidov's sheer skill. Yeah, he's a special player, and likely, I shouldn't say likely, but very much, quite possibly, the player the Canadiens have been looking for to, their superstar. They've been waiting for their superstar. Demidov has potential to be it.
I definitely agree. I think the Canadiens were they're just ecstatic when they got him for sure. So he's going to be exciting when he comes into the NHL. All right, couple quick questions to end here. Who is going to lead the team in scoring and give us a bold prediction for the season?
I'd say it's a safe assumption that Nick Suzuki is going to lead the team in scoring again. He's kind of their jack of all trades, master of all. He does everything so well, and he's their Iron Man too. So he's like the only one who's which is amazing in and of itself. But he scored a career high 77 points last season in 82 games, obviously. I think it's quite possible he reaches the point per game plateau. Yeah, he's going to get all the ice time in the world, assuming he stays healthy.
Yeah. All right, a bold prediction or hot take for this season for the Canadiens.
I'm not going to say that the Canadiens make the playoffs because that just seems so unlikely in my but I'm going to say that the Canadiens have two 40-goal scorers in Cole Caulfield and Patrik Laine.
That's that would be bold for Laine because he hasn't done it in a bit, but yeah, and Caulfield definitely is capable. So yeah, definitely something that could happen. All right. Well, thanks, Ryan, for coming on the show and talking Canadiens, previewing this season, because I think it's going to be a fun one for a lot of the young guys getting more development and this team moving forward even more. Because I think when everyone's in their prime, this is going to be a very fun team to watch. I think they are already, but this team's going to be good. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We got tons of preview content already out on the site and lots of stuff on the Substack as well. Make sure to check it out throughout the season as we go. And but until our next preview, we'll see you next time.